and we're pleased that you could all join us for this rededication of the rock that you see here today, and it's affectionately called. Today we'll take a look back at the origins of the Air Force's missile and space programs and the Heritage Organization, which today is represented by SMC. This monument, the Rock, marked the location of the Western Development Division, which General Schriever established in Inglewood, California in 1954, and as you'll see on one of the plaques at the site of the St. John's Catholic School. Now, I have to tell you on a personal note, I came here in the late summer of 1960 from graduate school as a very junior captain, and in fact worked in this building over here. It used to have a letter on it instead of a number for 4 years for people I'm sure General Schriever knows well, Pat Box and Bob Duffy, in the guidance business. But throughout my Air Force career, I've often reflected back on the talent that was here when I came here, and some of whom had left by that time, whose names are on the plaque. Sam Phillips was a colonel. Tom Marsh was a major. People like Snavely, Buckingham, others who went on to important roles in the Air Force role here, and one very junior Captain Dalton was sitting in this building over here, kind of awed by all the talent. So it's more than just the name of the organization. I think what General Schriever did, and throughout my career, I can tell you, I have never seen in one place the concentration of blue suit talent that I found when I came to Los Angeles in 1960, and the credit for that certainly belongs to General Schriever and the people that he brought together. Now, the rock, I'm told, the physical rock itself, comes from the site of the first Atlas missile launcher. And under the sponsorship of the Air Force Association, LA Chapter 147, now the Schriever Chapter, this rock was dedicated with the plaque on it by General Schriever and General Jimmy Doolittle in 1965. Now, 31 years later, through the work of the Air Force Association, they managed to wrest the rock away from Inglewood and bring it here to this location. And today, under the joint sponsorship of NDIA and the AFA and SMC, we're here to rededicate the rock and the new plaques that have been added that you'll see here today. At this time, I'd like to introduce Lieutenant General Select. And I told him I know that Congress only does it on Thursday, so we'll hope that maybe today's the right day when they approve things. General Gene Tatini, who's the commander of the Space and Missile Systems Center.
Good morning, General Schriever, General Dalton. I want to thank you both for being here with us this morning, and I'd also like to express my appreciation to all of our distinguished guests in the audience who took time away from their very, very busy schedules to be with us. And as General Dalton pointed out, I would also, both personally and as the commander of SMC, like to express our appreciation to the Air Force Association and to the National Defense Industry Association for sponsoring this event this morning. At the Space and Missile Systems Center, as we do our day-to-day business, we all have our eye to the future, to the warfighter of tomorrow, and to the next century, the 21st century, as we field new weapon systems, as we foster new technologies, and as we define the future architecture for military space. In the midst of all of these forward-looking and far-reaching activities, it's important that we take time to remember and reflect on our origin. For after all, it's the basis for everything that has happened today and everything that will happen to us in the future. Now, as General Dalton explained, this rock has long symbolized the heritage of the Air Force ballistic missile business and our space programs. As he indicated, it was originally quarried from the first Atlas missile launcher, and the rock has literally formed the foundation of the Air Force launch efforts and our pathway to space. When the rock was relocated to the Western Development Center here in Los Angeles, it stood at the heart of the Air Force's Ballistic Missile Development Center. As the plaque explains, the ICBM development effort was the largest single project ever undertaken by this country and the foundation of America's exploration into space, and a triumph for our government and industry team. The fact is that this monument captures one of the landmark events in the history of the United States. The new additions to the rock that we're going to dedicate this morning remind us of this history, of more than 4 decades of excellence by SMC and its predecessor organizations, and the visionaries who founded this organization in the midst of the Cold War, and the extraordinary legacy that they've left to all of us. We at SMC, and perhaps the entire nation, owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to General Schriever and the others whose names are on this rock. Our challenge now is to build on their legacy. Now, without any further ado, we have the opportunity to unveil 3 new plaques that will highlight and distinguish the significance of the rock. General Schriever, I'd like to ask you and General Dalton if you would join me for our official unveiling. The plaque that we just unveiled reads that this monument marks the site of the original Western Development Center in Inglewood, California. It was moved to the Los Angeles Air Force Base and rededicated by the commander of the Space and Missile Systems Center on August 30th, 1996. Again, the rock and the additions we made today were all donated to us by the Air Force Association Schriever chapter right here at Los Angeles Air Force Base. And now let me get out of here and introduce to you the individual that you're probably all here to hear. And it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you the first commander of the Western Development Center and the father of the United States Air Force's space program, General Bernard A. Schriever. General Schriever.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be here today. I think the rock has finally found its final resting place. This is the right place for it to be. There were a few remarks made earlier. I want to say, first of all, a lot of my friends are here, and I know that they're watching and they'll be critical, as they always are. You go to a meeting here, the IRT, and I can't understand half of what they're saying because they're talking in acronyms all the time. I would change all that if I had 4 stars on my record.
I agree.
We had some earlier, in I think it was General Dalton, about the people that we've had here in this organization right from the very beginning. And I can assure you that we've had the good fortune of having great people here at all times since, and that's now 45 years this year that we've started this operation here. 45 years. You realize that only 37 years between the time the Wright brothers flew their first airplane and that we started the ICBM program. 38 years, so it was 45 years since. But we've accomplished great things since also. Now, how did we get these great people? Well, the ICBM program was given very high priority, and just to give you an example, I was flying from Albuquerque here to Los Angeles at the very, very beginning of our program. As a matter of fact, we were just recruiting people. I was on the airplane, and Terry Yoon was sitting next to me and I told Terry, where are you going? And he said, well, I just got orders to go to the Navy War College. And I said, no, you're not. You're coming out here to WDD. He said, B will kill me. So I don't care, you're coming to WDD. And he did. And another instance, we gave a briefing after about the first year in operation in Washington. And we were just getting our first launch sites, our R&D launch sites, underway at Cape Canaveral. And there was one individual he was a colonel in the Air Force, sitting in the back row, not saying anything, until we were through with our briefings with respect to the test facilities that we had to build at the Cape. And it turned out to be Colonel Bill Leonard, who was on the air staff, and he tore us to pieces. And in essence, I felt that, we didn't know a damn thing about building R&D facilities. So I talked to Trev Gardner, who was in the Pentagon, acting as Assistant Secretary for R&D. Some of you I know remember him, and he was a real key to the whole ICBM program. I said, Trev, I want this guy Leonard assigned to WDD. So I met Leonard in the hall, and I said, Bill, that's a great remarks that you made with respect to how lousy our proposed program was. So you're coming out to the West Coast. And he did. So that shows you, God, that sun is moving faster than
We're going to get you in the front row.
We didn't do it good enough last time.
We want you in the front row.
Terrible advanced planning is all I can say. Well, let me start out with my remarks. I'll keep you here all day, but that's what you all do to me when I come to this IRT meeting. I'm going to start out by saying something about Hap Arnold, who I think was the greatest visionary that we ever had in the Air Force. And after World War II, I came back from the Pacific, was assigned to the Pentagon. I worked for General Arnold when he was a lieutenant colonel in command of March Field in the early 30s. So I had known General Arnold well, and he called me into his office and said, we have to retain our close relationship with the scientific community. And I ended up being in charge of a shop called Scientific Liaison. That's how I got to know Yvonne Getting and all of the scientists that really made the Air Force so science-oriented. It was Hap Arnold's vision that saw that. And I want to say a word about his chief architect, von Karman, who was the chairman of the SAB for many years. Arnold said after World War II, he said the introduction of the jet aircraft, rocket engines, nuclear weapons, and electronics has changed what the next war will look like. It will look very different from the past war. And it certainly has. It's been true. Von Karman, he asked Von Karman to make a study which turned out to be beyond, what was it, Yvonne? Yeah, that's right. You were involved in that. I don't know whether anybody else in this group was at that time. But coming out of, he asked von Karman to look specifically at the feasibility of a space satellite, a reconnaissance satellite. I want to give you one example of Arnold's vision. In the 30s, if you were not a regular officer in the Air Force, you were in and out of the Air Force as a reserve officer. That's what happened to me. And in 1938, I happened to be flying for Northwest Airlines as a co-pilot. Hap Arnold came through Seattle, Washington, and he asked Bill Allen if Schriever was in town, we'd have a golf game out there, and it so happened that we did. And finishing the round, we were sitting in the locker room, just General Arnold and myself, and he was then the chief of the Air Force. And he said, "Benny, we're going to get some additional regular officers in the Air Force. Are you going to take the examination for a regular officer given in October of 1938?" I said I didn't know for sure whether I was or not, because my wife might not like it, because she likes the airline business okay. But I took the examination anyway, one of the few arguments that I won. Sitting there, he said, what I'm trying to get is as many airline pilots as I can, because we need to have an all-weather Air Force. And at that point, now 1938, he said the airline pilots or the airlines were flying weather much better than the Air Force, and we've lost a lot of good pilots to the airlines, and I want to get as many back as possible. Well, as I was one of the 180 some odd that were commissioned as a regular officer in October of 1938. And to me, that was my best decision that I ever made, because I loved the Air Force. It was challenging all the way through. My whole career, it's still challenging, and it will continue to be that way. Now, let me get back to the rock. And all kind words have already been said about the rock, so all I can say, I'm very happy that it's found its resting place here, which I think it will be final and will remain here for many more years to come, and for the future people coming through here will maintain the legacy and heritage of what the rock really stands for. Now, let me just quickly go through. I went back and talked about von Karman and the scientific aspect of the Air Force. What really triggered the ICBM was a breakthrough of the thermonuclear weapon in 1953. The spring meeting it happened at Patrick Air Force Base. The SAB met at Patrick Air Force Base, and two briefings were made, one by von Karman, and one by von Neumann, and the other one by Edward Teller. Both of them made the same speech, and I'm sure that they hadn't really talked to each other. That was that it was now, remember that the first thermonuclear device was a 50,000-pound wet device. They both indicated that a dry thermonuclear weapon weighing 1,500 pounds, the megaton yield, was feasible and would be available by 1960. And I was running the development planning office at that time. Yvonne had gone back to his laboratories. No, I guess he went to Raytheon. So I went to see von Karman the next week, and out of that came the two studies. One, the SAB set up a particular study group to provide the credibility behind the statements that have been made. I believed it, and that we could do that if von Neumann and Edward Teller said so. I believed it. They finished their report in the summer of in June of 1950, June of '54, and following that was a second study which was headed by Trev Gardner, looking into the long-range missiles, including feasibility of an ICBM. Their report came out in a teapot called Teapot document, came out in February of 1954, and covered technology management and recommended the highest priority be given to the initiation of an ICBM program with a target of IOC in 1960. And the Air Force response was very positive, but we did have some problems. First, in the organizational arrangement, which turned out to be rather unique and revolutionary. It was set up here, which was WDD, and instead of having a prime contractor, we created systems engineering and technical direction, which was given to Raymond Woolridge at that time. The Air Force, under General Twining, gave the program highest priority in the Air Force, and we were underway here in August of 1954 when I signed a one-paragraph order in which I became the commander of WDD. It was the 2nd of August, 1954. Everybody knows what has happened since, but just to put a little emphasis, we had the Atlas, the Titan II, the Minuteman, the Thor, and we had our first space capability by 1962. So in 8 years, these missiles were not only developed, tested, but were operational with the reporting infrastructure, supporting infrastructure in place. The Discover program was the first space program to provide reconnaissance. Discover 14 was launched in August of 1960, provided the first film from space recovered by air snatch. So the program was a howling success, but there were plenty of hot seats in the interim. I can recall the first Thor launch. It had a 12-inch apogee. It's true. I know it's a laugh now, but I saw it. Commission set up to undo what the last few commissions have done. We know how to do it. We really do. We really do. And we have the talent. There's no reason why we should spend so much money, move so slowly, go through so many wickets. I know I'd go crazy. I'd stop. I think the bottom line is we've got to establish a management approach which doesn't allow anyone to say no unless they can also say yes. That's a simple announcement. I have to operate. system, I wrote this out so I won't have to stop too long. But I said the system, this is looking at the future, must eliminate all those who now can say no, cannot say yes. First priority would be to build a defense, that is in terms of what we need from a standpoint of our nation's national security. We need defense to have equal priority as offense. This is particularly true with weapons of mass destruction threatening us. And we seem to can't, we also seem unable to come to an agreement with respect to what our threat is. And the Rumsfeld report, I think, states it more clearly and more objectively than any other study that's been made on a threat, and the threat is there. We need to put into effect, it's not difficult to identify the most important programs that we have for national security. Those programs should be managed on a special way. Take a lot of programs and put them under the control of the acquisition types, but put the people that have vision and the kind of really go get them sort of things from the standpoint of technology. Technology is, there's never been a period in the history of mankind such as we've had in the last years of this next year is the last year of our
Century.
yeah, 99. God, we're in the last year. At moments. But I'll close by simply saying that we know how to do these things. We know how to manage these things, and we need a thorough study. We need to put the priority on defense, particularly with respect to defense against weapons of mass destruction. What's being done now is certainly far from what is optimum from the standpoint of what technology would provide, and also too slow, too costly. So with that, I'm glad that I was in a time period when we had capability of putting our capabilities together and under a management approach that would really get the job done quickly. I don't think there was a single ballistic missile developed by the Air Force or Navy that was not operational in less than 6 years. So that would be unheard of in today's way of doing business. Thank you.